Fundraising for a nonprofit is a challenging long-term endeavor, but endowments can provide a safety net and some reliable revenue for an organization each month if you can successfully start and grow one. So in this Changemaker Cafe episode, we'll be talking to Jeff Williamson, Executive Director of One Big Gift, for his expert insights on what exactly is an endowment fund and how does it work? How can your nonprofit actually use endowment funds? And how can you get started with an endowment even if you're a new or smaller organization? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content on nonprofits, fundraising, and more. Let's go.
I'm Jeff Williamson. I'm the Executive Director of One Big Gift. And at One Big Gift, we focus on helping other nonprofits financially flourish. So an endowment is different from a rainy day fund or a reserve fund in that an endowment specifically is money set aside where it is the interest or the yield that is being produced by the investment is what is used to fund either just ongoing operating funds or, for example, like at a school, it could be used specifically and only for tuition assistance. And with an endowment, most endowments, almost every endowment, you never touch the principal or the initial gift. You're only using the yield for a purpose at the nonprofit. One real life example would be at a school. That's where I'm most familiar with them, although I've seen them in a lot of different areas. But someone gives an initial gift, say $1 million. In that particular case, then the school would have to determine how are we going to invest those funds. Most important always is to never lose the principal gift. You never want it to go down. So many different schools or organizations would, for example, invest in treasury bills, and they're going to be paying out at somewhere between 2 and 4%. Say it's a really good with treasury bills and you have $1 million. That means $40,000 a year would be spun off in yield or interest from the treasury bonds, and then those $40,000 would be allocated to students who need tuition assistance. So again, the goal or the question is always, how do you invest the money? Are you trying to protect principal? Are you trying to grow the principal? How much interest are you trying to generate from it? And so those are the key issues around endowments.
All right, so as Jeff explains here, just like a person can have a high yield savings account, a nonprofit can have an endowment which generates interest that the nonprofit can then use as funding for its operations and programming. This dashes a huge misconception that I know a lot of people have, that nonprofits can only get funding or generate revenue through donations or grants. When I started a nonprofit, I know I didn't learn straight away that nonprofits could invest their funds, including in the stock market. So let's now hear from Jeff on some of the ways nonprofits can legally invest funds, such as through an endowment, to generate that spendable interest.
There are many different mechanisms that nonprofits can use in investing the principal gift. So treasury bonds is one of them. CDs is another. Simple checking account, although they tend to produce zero yield. Many different nonprofits will use the stock market. Obviously, the stock market has much more risk, but it also has more upside. And so sometimes they'll do a balance within the stock market. And then the other option is private type investments. And private type investments is where we at One Big Gift invest our endowments because it produces a consistent high yield with no stock market risk. But there are many options that nonprofits can use to invest their endowment dollars.
When we think about how nonprofits can invest endowment funds or other funds to generate interest, it's just important to consider a few rules. First, nonprofits can't invest funds that are considered restricted, meaning funds that a donor has already earmarked as having to go towards a specific purpose, project, or program, at least not without the donor's permission to go ahead and invest those restricted funds. Next, funds need to be managed by your board and leadership responsibly without excessive risk so that your organization can steward its funds effectively and uphold its public serving mission. And also, funds can't be invested in a way that could present a conflict of interest, such as investing in the private company of one of the nonprofit's board members. Endowments can feel, in my opinion, very mysterious to those without a financial management background. So let's hear from Jeff on three of the common misconceptions people might have about them, especially in regards to how they impact donor perceptions of your nonprofit's financial situation and what happens if your nonprofit has an emergency and actually needs those endowment funds.
So, common myths or maybe misunderstandings about endowments. One certainly would be the idea of, well, if we have an endowment, then people might stop giving to us because we're wealthy, we're rich, we don't need the money, that sort of thing. One of the ways that I feel that endowments could be used really well and actually more powerfully to actually increase giving is, for example, if you had an endowment that was set up to cover your general operating fees or costs annually, then you could actually be going out to donors to say 100% of your gift is actually going to this cause, to this purpose, because you could then say, someone should ask you, well, how does that work? How could you give away 100%? Well, the easy answer is because all of our operating costs are already covered. Now every dollar given funds our mission or our purpose. So if we're feeding the homeless, for example, or providing shelter for people, 100% of the dollars goes to that. So I think there's actually, in many ways, more power to being able to say we have an endowment that covers this to increase funding. When an endowment is set up, an initial gift from a donor has come into the nonprofit executive director working with his or her team and the board of the nonprofit would determine, in essence, what are the rules to the endowment. So most nonprofits set up their endowments where, again, the initial gift can never be touched and only the interest or the yield can be used. However, it is possible and allowable and legal for a nonprofit, when initially establishing the endowment, to determine that a certain percentage of the initial gift can be used in emergency funds. Part of that should be worked out with the donor so that the donor understands how their gift is being used. But I have seen it before where nonprofits will say, for example, 10% of the initial gift can be used in a certain situation, and it should be spelled out very clearly what that looks like, because again, ideally that endowment is going to be lasting forever, and there will obviously then be a new executive director sometime down the line, a new board down the line, and so they would want to be able to go back to the original documentation to make sure that the initial donor's wishes are being applied correctly over a long period of time.
So let's say you're excited about the potential support an endowment might offer your nonprofit, but you're a smaller organization or an organization that's just getting started. Can a small nonprofit have an endowment? And how can your organization attract a major donor to help you set one up?
Endowments really can be beneficial and useful for any size of nonprofit. Obviously, larger nonprofits, more established nonprofits are more likely to have an endowment, but that doesn't have to be the case. When I think about smaller or newer or younger nonprofits where they're getting started, they haven't established themselves well, I do believe that would be beneficial, if at all possible, for a newer nonprofit, smaller nonprofit to set aside, say, even 2 or 3% of their operating budget every year to start building an endowment. And the reason why is that signals to donors or potential donors that you're thinking about the future, you're already planning about the future. It shows long time. And so for investors or people that are partnering with you in the sense of donating, when you can signal to them that you're thinking long term, you're thinking financially, about your future, I believe that that instills confidence in a donor or a potential donor to say, well, I can actually add to that endowment. And that's one thing, and we haven't talked about, but that idea of endowments don't have to be just one person establishing an endowment with one large gift. It actually can be a group or I like to think of it as a team, but a team of people coming together who all believe in your organization and want to combine their giving to establish an endowment. So you can have 10, 20, 100 people each donate some amount of money, whatever that they're comfortable and capable of giving, combine those funds together, create one endowment, and then that can fund the future for an organization.
Whether you're thinking of an endowment as part of your fundraising strategy at this stage in your organization's growth or not, you'll still need a fundraising platform that's going to help you be able to build up your donor base and grow your revenue so you can make an even bigger impact in your community. So it's a great time to share a little more about the sponsor of this video, Click and Pledge. You're going to need a reliable fundraising platform to help your organization collect donations. So with Click and Pledge, you're going to get a robust dashboard where you can plan out all your fundraising campaigns and monitor your progress towards your goals, highly customizable donation forms to match your branding, in-person fundraising features so you can collect donations at events, peer-to-peer fundraising so all of your supporters can go out and form teams and raise money in their own networks for your cause, video fundraising with donation links embedded directly in your videos, text to give features, donor outreach tools to improve donor retention, a complete Salesforce integration, and a lot of other integrations and more features. Some platforms are going to charge more based on your organization's size, but Click and Pledge has pricing structure that stays the same even as your donor list increases. And there are no contracts, and all of their solutions are included at no extra cost. You can learn more about Click and Pledge's fundraising solutions and get your first $25 monthly fee waived using the QR code here or the links below this video. You can get in contact with their team to ask questions or schedule a demo or sign up to give it a try right now. This was a new topic for the channel, so I'd really love to hear what you thought about it and about endowments. Do you think it's something that your organization is going to look further into for the future? Why or why not? Share in the comments. And I know that Jeff is also happy to answer your questions.
If you're interested in having a conversation and kicking some ideas around how do we help build an endowment, if you would like to work with us or you just want some input on what you're thinking about, please feel free to reach out to me at jeff@onebiggift.org, or you can find our website at onebiggift.org.
And I'll also go ahead and leave Jeff's link in the description below this video. Don't forget, you can always get more content in my weekly newsletter and resources on my website, changemakercafe.com. Be sure to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss our next episode, and I'll see you later.